Jeffrey Edward Epstein was a Jewish-American financier who managed to embed himself among numerous celebrities, politicians, world leaders, royalty, academic leaders, and CEOs across the globe. For decades, his operations were kept out of the public's eye, and any talk about how our world leaders were up to no good were largely dismissed as conspiracy theories, or brushed off as isolated incidences like Watergate. But ever since Jeffrey Epstein's quote-unquote suicide in 2019, he's only been known to the public as one of the most prolific and powerful child sex traffickers in history. In 2005, police in Palm Beach, Florida, started investigating Epstein after a parent reported that he raped her 14-year-old daughter. Federal officials would later identify 36 additional underage girls who were raped by Epstein. However, he didn't face any kind of repercussions. In 2008, he struck a plea deal brokered by former Secretary of Labor for the United States, Alexandria Acosta. Epstein would plead guilty in Florida to just 2 charges. One for soliciting a child for sex and another just for prostitution. He served 18 months in a private wing of Palm Beach County Stockade, unlike any other convicted sex offender from Florida who would just go straight to prison. However, after only serving 3.5 months, he was allowed to leave the jail on work release for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He was released in July of 2009, just 13 months into his already short 18-month sentence, and placed on house arrest until August of 2010. He quietly continued his operations behind closed doors. The vast majority of the American people had no idea this case even happened, and those that did most likely didn't know just how powerful Jeffrey Epstein was. Until July 6, 2019.
There is some other news we're following tonight. Billionaire Jeffrey Epstein is expected to appear in federal court in Lower Manhattan tomorrow following new charges related to alleged sex crimes involving minors.
For the first time, his name wasn't confined to those who were in the know. We were learning about the Manhattan townhouse, the private jet, the ranch in New Mexico, the island, and most notably, his connections. Photos started surfacing of Epstein alongside his spindly bridge troll sidekick Ghislaine Maxwell, hanging out at parties alongside Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Elon Musk, and of course, the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. Then, coincidentally, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his prison cell on August 10, 2019. Former New York City medical examiner Barbara Sampson ruled out his death as a suicide, but nobody was falling for that shit. Forensic pathologist Michael Baden publicly disputed the ruling since the prison guards had reportedly fallen asleep while the cameras conveniently malfunctioned at the exact moment Epstein allegedly hung himself. For years, this was all the general public knew, or at least all we were told to know. We were basically told that it wasn't as big of a deal as it would later become. Nobody ever got prosecuted or investigated. The former Prince Andrew completely embarrassed himself on an interview that would eventually force King Charles to strip Andrew of all of his royal titles, but that was about it. Donald Trump was arrested in 2023 for unrelated racketeering charges, but he never served any actual jail or prison time, and he would later go on to win the 2024 presidential election. What's even stranger is what comes afterwards. Just a year later, on November 19, 2025, Donald Trump will later go on to sign a bill to pass the Epstein Transparency Act, which required the United States Department of Justice to publicly release all of the Epstein files for the whole world to see and officially bring everyone involved to some kind of justice.
What could possibly go wrong?
Florida ranks 3rd nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused.
Attorney General Pam Bondi oversaw the first rollout of the Epstein files. This first batch of files didn't reveal much other than everything that was found during the raid of Epstein's properties, as well as a handful of pictures, documents, and emails, a lot of which was heavily redacted with that same black bar they used to censor nudity on TV. Entire pages were blacked out, the names of Epstein's victims were poorly redacted, while a lot of the names of Epstein's friends and businesses and partners were blacked out, and that goes without mentioning that the fact that the Department of Justice was actively deleting files from the release despite the fact they didn't release all of the files to begin with. Legal scholars criticized Bondi's fragmented release of the files rather than the comprehensive archive that was required by the law, and pointed out that the Transparency Act mandated full, unbridled disclosures unless doing so would endanger the victims on ongoing prosecutions. Standing right beside her through all of this was Director of the FBI, Kash Patel. The same man for years had publicly accused the Bureau of covering up Epstein's crimes during the later half of the Joe Biden administration. Patel was one of the louder talking heads claiming that the FBI was in possession of Epstein's little black book of contacts. He even went as far as to go on numerous podcasts demanding the names be released.
So are you, like, in closing here, I want to just be very clear. Republicans could get Epstein's list out now? Like, how would that process work?
Simple. One subpoena to the FBI. Give me the list. Oh, you don't want to give me the list and you're going to break the law and commit contempt of Congress? We're going to take your money. We're going to take Chris Wray's private jet. Taxpayer-funded G5 rides across the country to his Appalachian State vacation home down to Georgia and all over the rest of the place. That guy doesn't need a G5 government-funded jet. And the second you take that money, you get Epstein's list.
And when Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election, Patel was later sworn in as the new head of FBI. But suddenly the tone changed. Patel insisted that the Bureau had released everything legally presentable, despite the fact at this point in time, many of their files and documents were missing from the files. Patel would also go as far as to claim that there was no credible evidence of trafficking victims to powerful third parties.
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
And for a little while, Kash Patel was actually right. The first batch of Epstein's files didn't contain anything overtly alarming, and if there was, they were hidden behind the fucking redactions. There was a birthday letter addressed to Epstein written and signed by Donald Trump with a silhouette drawing of sorts that depicts a girl's naked torso. Although it was the photos released in this batch that caught the public's eye the most, this was the first time the general public saw bizarre decor seen in Epstein's properties. Epstein's child porn scrapbook, numerous sex toys, direct quotes from makes me laugh every time. Direct quotes from the book Lolita that appear to be written on the bodies of victims, Epstein's photograph with little kids, and of course the numerous photos of celebrities and other public figures that were taken at private parties and gatherings. All of which are horrible and worth investigating, but nothing the general public wouldn't have already come to expect from Jeffrey the Island Boys and his droogs. But thankfully the American people didn't have to wait too long to learn how bad shit truly was.
On the Justice Department's efforts to release the Epstein files, he says the DOJ is releasing more than 3 million more pages of files today, as well as images and videos. Blanche says the department's only withholding files permitted to be withheld under law, including victims' personal information, depictions of abuse or child pornography, and anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation.
On January 30th, 2026, the Department of Justice released the second batch of the Epstein files. This batch contained roughly 3.5 million documents, including bank statements, emails, more pictures, and even videos, as well as various court and government documents, all of which implicated numerous horrific, disgusting, bizarre, occultist, and of course illegal activities committed by Epstein and numerous other prolific figures around the world. These were the most revealing and disturbing set of files yet. One of the most talked about revelations was a drafted email written by Epstein to himself back in 2013 talking about co-founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates. The email described how Bill Gates had an affair with quote-unquote Russian girls, alongside having affairs with other men's wives, which resulted in him contracting an STD, to which one of Bill Gates' associates secretly gave antibiotics to Gates' ex-wife, Melinda French Gates. This email was written 8 years before the two would get divorced in May of 2021. Bill Gates had already made appearances in the first batch of files where he can be seen photographed with Jeffrey Epstein, alongside 2 other pictures where he's standing next to redacted girls. Elon Musk also appears in the files, emailing Epstein directly, despite publicly denying ever going on Epstein's island, even stating he refused invitations. The emails contain discussions between 2012 and 2014 where Elon Musk asked Epstein about the party scene, with Epstein offering to send Elon a helicopter to bring him to the island. Elon has also been photographed chilling with Jizz at some random ass event. American businessman and the 41st Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, makes numerous appearances in the files. In 2012, one of Epstein's aides reached out to Lutnick via email to coordinate a meeting while Lutnick was in St. Thomas. to which Lutnick agreed to have lunch with Epstein on his island and proceeded to bring along his wife and 4 young children to Jeffrey Epstein's island.
Coincidence? I think not!
In 2015, Lutnick invited Epstein to a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign held at Lutnick's financial firm. The funny thing about all this is that Lutnick would go on an interview in October 2025 and paint a completely different picture about his relationship with Epstein.
We renovate, we buy our house, and our house is pigeons and mice.
Right.
Okay, that's it. It was derelict.
Right.
So we rebuild our house. We move in 2005. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 2008, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee. So my wife and I go next door. You know, we walk the 7 steps,
Yes.
right, to the next house for coffee. We share a wall.
Right.
Right. So it's in New York City. So he invites us in. We have coffee in this, and he says, do you want a tour? We said, great.
Interesting.
He's got a really big house.
Every room you went into?
He's got, well, I'll tell you. So his house is like super big, really wide. And so he gives me a tour in the living room, big living room. And then across from it is double doors. I assume it's the dining room.
Yeah.
And he opens the doors and there's a massage table in the middle of the room.
Ooh.
And candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he like gets like weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Really?
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
So that was a fucking lie.
On top of rape, pedophilia, and sex trafficking, the second batch of files also revealed that Epstein and his constituents were guilty of torture, murder, ritualistic human sacrifice, and even cannibalism. I'm serious. An email sent on July 16, 2009, Epstein sent to a redacted recipient saying, "There are millions of babies, very little good vegetable cream cheese," to which the redacted individual would respond by saying, "Lol, I don't know if cream cheese and baby are on the same level." A transcript of a conversation between Epstein and what are assumed to be 2 scientists named Richard and Jessica can be found in the excerpt from the 23-page document. Jeffrey Epstein and Richard can be seen talking about using women as a food source, where the word cannibalizing was even used in this context. Document ETFA 012-46-048 shows this FBI report dated back to September 4th, 2019, where a redacted male victim of Epstein's recalls an incident when he was 4 years old where his great uncle sodomized him while Epstein watched. In the same document, the victim would also recount memories of being sodomized on a yacht at the age of 8, witnessing a mixed-race blood orgy, as well as witnessing several babies getting their intestines ripped out and eaten. The document also talks about a victim of the former Prince Andrew recalling the disgraced royal penetrating her with tools and beer bottles when she was around 6 to 8 years old. And one time, while trying to escape, Jiz Maxwell caught the victim and proceeded to beat the girl with a broom before shoving the broom's handle up the victim's vagina. Sultan Ahmed bin Laden, a millionaire Muslim businessman and the CEO of the multinational logistics company based in Dubai known as DP World, was mentioned in the files over 4,000 times. United States Representative Thomas Massie publicly outed the Sultan as one of Epstein's closest friends and one of Epstein's co-conspirators to his child sex trafficking ring. An email from 2009 shows Jeffrey Epstein messaging the Pajit Sultan saying, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I love the torture video." A wire transfer request document from 2018, right around the time when the FBI actually started investigating his pedophilia ring. Epstein requested over $4,000 from SunTrust Bank so he can order 6 55-gallon drums of sulfuric acid. What could someone possibly use sulfuric acid for when they're being investigated by the FBI for crimes against humanity? Why don't we ask our friends at the fucking cartel?
I took one step outside the resort.
Donald Trump is another name mentioned in the files 1,000 times, though he is one of the few individuals that the Department of Justice is actively trying to protect by deleting or suppressing documents. Numerous files Bondi and Patel seem to have forgotten about seem to reveal Trump hosting his own P. Diddy-esque underage parties at Mar-a-Lago, the historic landmark luxury resort in Palm Beach, Florida, which Trump also owns. One specific case from documents EFTA 01660651, where a victim recalls Jeffrey Epstein bringing little girls in so Trump can auction them off at his parties. She says Trump would go as far as to measure the girls' quote-unquote tightness by putting his fingers in their vaginas and measuring their vulvas. Documents EFTA 00276891 and EFTA 02036700 show two separate accounts of Epstein recruiting teenage girls at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Couple all of that with the numerous references to the infamous code words seen in Epstein's emails such as pizza, ice cream, grape soda, and jerky. And I think it's safe to say that the Pizzagate conspiracy theory from back in 2016 has now officially been confirmed to be true. There are numerous other quote-unquote conspiracy theories that are confirmed to be true in the second batch of files. Speculation that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had involvement in the September 11th terrorist attacks, when a painting of George Bush sitting crisscross applesauce like an autistic child while appearing to fly 2 paper planes into 2 collapsed Jenga towers. Digging a little deeper, people have found 2 weird emails. The first one, document EFTA 005804330, businessman and politician for the Democratic Party, Philip Levine, sent an email to Ghislaine Maxwell on the 18th of September 2001 saying, "Where is the real pilot?" Document EFTA 023333970 shows an email sent by Ghislaine to Juan Espanganzo, son of the late Peruvian philanthropist and children's rights activist Marcel Perez de Creo, who was married to the late former Prime Minister of Peru from 2000 to 2001, Javier Perez de Creo. The email, sent on October 15, 2001, reads as follows: "It is the year 2032, and a father and a son walk the streets of Lower Manhattan. Approaching the site where the World Trade Center used to be in the end of the 20th century, father sighs and comments to think that right here used to be the Twin Towers. The son, not understanding, asks his father, 'What are the Twin Towers?' The father smiles and looks at his son and explains. The Twin Towers were 2 huge buildings that used to be here until 2001, where the Arabs destroyed them. The son looks up at his father and asks, 'And what are the Arabs?' Weirdly enough, the very day Ghislaine proceeds to forward this, the exact same email to numerous people such as American businessman Thomas Pritzker, Lord Herbert Robin Roderick, French model, scout, and sex trafficker Jean Lecbruno, British journalist and TV broadcaster, God, these fucking names, Annabelle Hellestein, New York journalist and contributor to the Dazed and Confused magazine Joaquin Marcus, and 2 mysterious recipients who only refer to themselves as the Invisible Man and Gibby. Even stranger are the revelations that Mohammed Atta, one of the main terrorists in 9/11, rented aircrafts alongside lessons with instructors numerous times at Palm Beach Flight Training, a flight school located in Palm Beach County Airport between the 16th and the 20th of August 2001. At the time, the airport director of Palm Beach, Florida was a man named Bruce Pelly who retired back in 2022. He's not in the files as far as I know, but I have a gut feeling he should be investigated. All information of online presence of Bruce is next to non-existent, and he's lucky enough not to be mentioned in the files, for now at least. But coincidentally, Nadia Marchenko, one of the pilots for Jeffrey Epstein's private plane, the Lolita Express, graduated from this very same flight school before immediately being hired by Epstein in 2012. However, before Nadia became a pilot, according to her own website, she was a runway model for an undisclosed modeling agency from her late teens until she decided to abruptly switch her career paths in her early 20s. At least that is what I can personally gather, given the fact that Nadia has conveniently never spoken about her modeling career, and when her ties to Jeffrey Epstein came to light, she pleaded the fifth throughout her entire testimony, so any information she knows might possibly die with her if she never goes under investigation. However, Nadia's own father, Peter McKinko, has his own mentions in the Epstein files. Twice where he can be seen trying to reach out to Epstein on LinkedIn back in January 2015, and once more in document EFTA 00216909 that shows Epstein's FedEx invoice from July 2004, where Peter can be seen receiving a 4-pound package from Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico.
Epstein's New Mexico ranch of horrors confirms a few other conspiracy theories in and of itself. You see, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't only interested in raping and murdering children, he was also interested in eugenics and transhumanism. In 1993, Jeffrey Epstein purchased the Zorro Ranch from former Governor Bruce King for around $12 million. And during this period of time, Epstein's interest shifted towards grandiose ideas of reshaping humanity through genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. Epstein had reportedly envisioned using the ranch to, quote, seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating as many as 20 women there. Annie Farmer, one of Epstein's victims and survivors, has even stated that she was sexually abused at the Zorro Ranch as early as 1996. However, one of the most disturbing files in regards to the Zorro Ranch comes from document ETFA 00067066. On the 25th of November 2019, local radio host for Albuquerque, New Mexico, Eddie Aragon, received an email from an anonymous staff member at the Zorro Ranch. The email read, "Edward, this is sensitive, so it will be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that has been there and seen it all, as a former staff of the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What is damning about Jeffrey Epstein is to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madame G? Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex." The staff member would also proceed to link 7 videos and ask for a singular Bitcoin in return, stating, "The USB will be sent anonymously to your attention by overnight courier upon receipt of the funds. You have my assurance that this is exclusive, never shared before. No attorneys, no samples, no questions, please. Confirm ASAP." One of the videos linked in the email is labeled to feature an American businessman by the name of Matthew Mellon having sex with an underage girl. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, Matthew Mellon died of a heart attack in his hotel room in Cancun on April 16, 2018. But in his death, he still managed to become a legend, as he's the only death in Mexico's history that wasn't caused by the cartel.
Get a load of this faggot!
In the book, Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales, journalists Dylan Howard, Melissa Cronin, and James Robertson linked Epstein to the Israeli intelligence service Mossad. They relied heavily on claims made by former Israeli intelligence officer Ari Ben-Mash, who would explicitly state that Epstein was an Israeli spy sent to collect blackmail on the world's elites. Another person who would echo this was Virginia Giuffre, who was one of the more prominent and vocal victims of both Jeffrey Epstein's and the former Prince Andrew's before her suicide in April 2025. She would publicly claim that Epstein was running both a blackmail and honeypot operation for both the CIA and Mossad. The current Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, would go on record stating that Epstein had no ties to Israel. But when have Jews been honest about anything, am I right?
Hello? That's not funny!
In document EFTA 0206-130, an email between Epstein's associates Leslie Groff and Nal Prow, wife of Israel's former prime minister, Ehud Barak, indicates that Ehud's head of security, Rafi Shlomo, installed and managed security equipment in Epstein's townhouse in Manhattan from 2016 to 2018, which would include, quote, 6 sensors stuck to the windows. This very same Manhattan townhouse was reportedly used to house underage models and frequently loaned to Epstein's associates whenever he wanted to have sex with the children and kill them. This is also where this photo of Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell and a 17-year-old Virginia Guelph was taken. Epstein and former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, would first meet in 2003, in which Huad would describe Epstein as, quote, a good Jew, and the two would maintain a close relationship ever since. From 2013 to 2017, Huad and his wife, Neil Prowl, have reportedly flown on Epstein's private jet and stayed on Epstein's Manhattan townhouse roughly over 30 times. Epstein also served as Huad's financial advisor. An email dated September 20th, 2013 shows Epstein bragging about his ability to help fatten up Huad's pockets by, quote, a few $100 million, end quote. In 2015, Barak invested in an Israeli technology company known as Carbine, known for developing video streaming and geolocation software. It would later be found out through the files that a substantial portion of said investments came directly out of Epstein's pocket. Additional emails have shown that attempting to connect Barak with entrepreneur and former CEO of PayPal, Peter Thiel, and his venture capital firm, Valar Ventures. I wonder if it's really the Venture Brothers. Epstein himself has already invested roughly $40 million into Valar Ventures between 2015 and 2016, but when Epstein and Huad tried pitching Carbine to Peter Thiel, he would decline because the company was still too early in its development. Huad would also seek Epstein's advice from another startup company he wanted to invest in, this time for an Israeli aerospace company developing solar-powered drones intended to provide internet connectivity while also enabling aerial surveillance capabilities. Epstein would surprisingly advise Huad to avoid investing in the startup after examining the company's financial records. Huad would also consult Epstein about motherfucking cocksucking bitch. Huad would also consult Epstein about brokering the sale of a company owned by Denver-based oil and gas developer Jack J. Greenberg. The proposed deal would involve selling a large stake in the company for hundreds of millions of dollars, but Epstein warned about the proposal appeared fraudulent and advised Huad to abandon the deal. Although given Jack Greenberg's later allegations, Epstein probably just didn't want another Jewish competition.
There can be only one.
Additional emails show Epstein leveraging his relationship with Huad to help arrange meetings with other powerful figures such as Israeli/Russian businessman Viktor Vesselberg, former Russian Deputy Minister of Economic Department Sergei Blokharov, former mayor of New York and media executive Michael Bloomberg, former president of France Nicolas Sarkozy, economist and former United States Secretary of Treasury Larry Summers, and really enough, actor, comedian, filmmaker Woody Allen. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The former Prime Minister of Norway, Thorbjørn Jagland, would also maintain a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein between 2011 and 2019, the year Epstein died. In 2013, Epstein and Bill Gates reportedly met Jihad at the former Prime Minister's residence in Strasbourg, France, where the Council of Europe is headquartered. This meeting would also be attended by Norwegian diplomat and former president of the International Peace Institute, Terje Rose Larsen, as well as biotech technology investor and one of Bill Gates' scientific advisors, Boris Nikolak. In an email, Epstein suggested Jagland arrange a meeting between him and Russian Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, so that Epstein could share that he described an insight about modern political landscape in the United States as well as the rise of Donald Trump. Shortly after the release of the second batch of files, Norwegian police would start investigating Jagland and his ties to Epstein. Norway's current Minister of Foreign Affairs, Espen Barth Eide, state that the Norwegian government would request that Jagland's diplomatic immunity be lifted so that the investigation would continue proper. Shortly after, Norwegian prosecutors would announce that Jagland would be charged with aggravated corruption, and once there was public scrutiny, Jagland would be hospitalized. Many news reports say that the hospitalization was due to an attempted suicide, but according to Jagland's lawyer, Anders Brosvit, the hospitalization was a result of the underlying health problems that were exaggerated by the pressure from the investigation and the surrounding public controversy.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Also good for Espen Barth Eide to push the prosecution of Jagland because the same can't be said for Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs that came before him, Borg Brende. In November 2025, Borg Brende would go as far as to publicly deny ever meeting Jeffrey Epstein. However, the release of the second batch of files revealed Brende's approximately 120 messages between him and Epstein from 2018 to 2019. With one message showing Epstein sending Brende a link referencing 2008 criminal conviction, to which Brende responded with a thumbs up emoji. Additional exchanges from Epstein and Brende talking about Sarah Natania, Benjamin Natunia's wife. Epstein would proceed to call her Miss Piggy. Jesus Christ. Additional documents will also reveal a photograph from April 2018 showing Brende alongside Norwegian diplomat Terje Larsen, as well-known American media executive and former chief of strategist for the White House, Steve Bannon. Currently, Brennan has maintained that he was unaware of Epstein's criminal activity and that the meetings that were strictly professional in the nature, but nobody's buying that shit. Speaking of the aforementioned Norwegian diplomat, Terje Larsen, Epstein donated roughly $650,000 to the New York-based International Peace Institute between 2011 and 2019. During this time, Terje served as the institute's president, and on the top of accepting extensive donations from a convicted child sex trafficker, Terje would also reach out to Epstein for personal loans. However, the biggest Norwegian elite Epstein was connected with was their crown princess herself, Mette Marit. The files show that the princess was first introduced to Epstein in 2011 and the two remained in contact for several years, despite the princess claims that she had cut contact with Epstein in 2013. In an email from 2011, the princess specifically stated that she looked into Epstein's 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from a minor online, to which she would state that the results didn't look good. Despite this acknowledgement, additional emails throughout the years would show the two discussing everything from literature, travel, even Epstein's search for a lover. Presumably one that's not a 9-year-old girl.
Surprise, surprise, members of the Jewish banking dynasty, the Rothschild family, also had deep connections with Jeffrey Epstein. The memes just love to write themselves, don't they?
I'm sorry, it's funny.
Anyway, Jeffrey Epstein himself would state that he gave Lynn Forrester de Rothschild financial help in the 1990s during her divorce with Democratic politician and former president of the New York City Council, Andrew Stein. According to Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, he was introduced to Epstein by Lynn Forrester. Jiz Maxwell would also go on record stating that Lynn Forrester was also responsible for introducing Epstein to former Prince Andrew and the former British Labour Party politician Peter Mandelson. Ariane de Rothschild held dozens of meetings with Epstein between 2013 and 2019, and would at one point negotiate a $25 million contract between Epstein's company, Southern Trust Company Incorporated. In 2016, Epstein attempted to secure admission to Columbia University for Ariane's daughter, Alice de Rothschild. To do so, he sought out Nobel Prize-winning neuroscientist Richard Axel, but it ultimately proved unsuccessful. Epstein would also maintain a connection with British socialite, model, and ex-wife of Nathaniel Rothschild, Annabelle Nielsen. In one email, Annabelle would agree to, quote, put together a group of girls, and would even make note that some of the girls were past their sell-by date. In another email, Epstein would ask, anything cute for after? To which Annabelle replies, cute as in cuddle toy, or cute as in badly behaved English girls? There is a little thing for my very young friend who is lunching her bikini range at Morton's, but that might just drive you mad. Some of the richest people in the world, ladies and gentlemen, can't even fucking spell check their emails. Continuing the theme of British elites connected to the most powerful child-raping cannibal known to history, the aforementioned Peter Mandelson, seen here looking like someone tried to draw Bill Gates from memory, also had an extensive history with Jeffrey Epstein, yada yada yada. In 2003, Mandelson wrote a message to Epstein for his 50th birthday, where he would describe Epstein as an intelligent, sharp-witted man, and referred to him as his best pal. After Epstein was first convicted in 2008, Mandelson would express support and even sympathy towards Epstein, who at that point was now a convicted child predator, in an email stating, "You have to be incredibly resilient, fight for early release, and be philosophical about it as much as you can. The whole thing has been years of torture, and now you have to show the world how big of a person you are, and how strong. Your friends stay with you and love you." Ha! Gay! The files also reveal Peter Mandelson was sharing private government information with Epstein. In June 2009, Mandelson forwarded Epstein a high-level Downing Street memo written by professor and founding chairman of the Policy Institute at King's College London, Nick Butler, outlining a proposal for roughly 20 billion British monies in government asset sales, as well as detailing elements of the Labour government's developing tax policy. In December of that year, Mandelson discussed efforts to influence the British government's approach to a proposed tax on bankers' bonuses, with one message where Mandelson can be seen suggesting that the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, should, quote, mildly threaten Chancellor Alistair MacLean Darling over the policy. On March 31st, 2010, Mandelson forwarded Epstein written summaries from the confidential meeting between Alistair Darling and Larry Summers only 5 minutes after receiving them. The meeting proposed banking regulations, as well as discussing taxation, policies, and broader U.S. economic coordination with European powers such as France and Germany. The following day, April 1st, Mandelson met with Larry Summers again and would also continue to forward the summaries to Epstein almost immediately after receiving them. Earlier in March 2010, Mandelson had lobbied officials within the Barack Obama administration to soften proposed restrictions on U.S. bank trading activities on behalf of both Epstein and American banker/current CEO of Barclays, Jess Staley. On May 9th, 2010, Mandelson gave Epstein advance notice of a €500 billion bailout intended for the European Union to stabilize the euro during the European debt crisis. The next day, Mandelson emailed Epstein stating that he had finally got him to go today, referring to the resignation of former Prime Minister of the UK, Gordon Brown, who would resign the day after that email was sent. And then there's Prince Andrew. Some additional geopolitical elites that had ties to Epstein include Princess Sophia of Sweden, the 26th Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Michael Rudd, the 26th President of Colombia, Andreas Pastrana Arango, Sarah Margaret Ferguson, Duchess of York, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin September 11th, the former President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, the former president of Mongolia, the former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton, as well as his husband, Hillary Clinton, and of course, our current president, Donald J. Trump.
Romulus!
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Epstein had such an overwhelmingly large amount of connections and influence, it's actually comical. I mean, it's not really, cause these people rape, murder, and eat children. But then you see shit like the former CEO of Chuck E. Cheese, David McKillips, and... honestly, I'm just at a loss of words. Take it away, Mr. Coffee.
Scientific skeptic Al Seckel shows up in the files, with one document showing Seckel organizing a conference with Epstein alongside prolific scientists such as Marie Gelman, Leonard Mado, Gerald J. Sussman, Francis Arnold, as well as cryptocurrency entrepreneur and co-founder of Tether, Brock Pierce. This meeting would later be held at Epstein's Island in 2011, however the most damning information comes from the emails between Epstein and Seckel from 2018, where Epstein paid Seckel tens of thousands of dollars to suppress every result about Epstein's 2008 conviction from search engines like Google in order to repair Epstein's image, even going as far as to edit Epstein's then Wikipedia page by replacing the 2006 mugshot from the article, as well as removing any mention of Epstein being a sex offender. American executive Steve Bannon makes a similar appearance in the files. Bannon worked alongside Ohad Barak as well as white-collar criminal defense lawyer Reed Winger in discussions of attempting to rehabilitate Epstein's public image. One of their efforts involved preparing Epstein for a potential television appearance in 60 Minutes. Although the interview never took place, it would be later revealed that Bannon recorded roughly 15 hours of interviews with Epstein. During the production of the Netflix docuseries Jeffrey Epstein's Filthy Rich, Bannon wanted to produce a competing documentary that would also be funded by Epstein himself. Epstein bluntly described the goal of this project to, quote, humanize the monster, and Bannon in turn would characterize the media of Epstein in their message as a crazed jihad. The proposed documentary would present Epstein in a more sympathetic light, and even then it would be filmed on Epstein's Island. Emails and texts between the two can be found in the files, where Bannon and Epstein can be seen discussing using a Covell agreement. The legal strategy designed to extend attorney/client privileges so Bannon would be allowed to join Epstein's legal team, despite the fact Bannon wasn't a lawyer. Bannon would have used this arrangement to censor or ban footage of Epstein from being used in the documentaries and reports under legal privilege.
Did they know where the money came from? I think if you told him,
if
I told him the devil,
100%.
the devil
himself.
The devil himself said, "I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life."
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
The Epstein files also reveal that Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, had document contact with both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, with his connections to Maxwell specifically spanning all the way back to 2003. One of the most notable pieces of evidence is a photo from an unknown date that appears to show Brin on Epstein's island. Additional court documents can be found in the files where Epstein accuser Sarah Ransom stated that she had encountered Brin and his then fiancé and co-founder of 23andMe and during a visit to Epstein's island. Anne blah 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 is also known as the sister of former YouTube CEO, the late Susan the same woman who is notorious for the corporatization of YouTube. But that didn't start with Susan, as the prior YouTube CEO that would later hire her, Salar Kamagar, also makes an appearance in the Epstein files where he can be seen in photos taken at a dinner in 2011 with Epstein and author/political commentator for PBS Newsweek and the New York Times, David Brooks. So the algorithm that all the YouTubers try to follow and, all this shit about demonetization and the enforcement of slop content in shorts is all thanks to one cannibalistic child sex trafficker. What a world we live in. Also, fun fact about David Brooks, he would publish a column in the New York Times where he would dismiss the existence of the Epstein files as a QAnon-related conspiracy, only for him to make his appearance in the first batch of the Epstein files just a month later.
Now that is irony!
Proof that Epstein was also cyberstalking underage girls on the ancient social media site MySpace in 2006 can also be found in the files. Alongside him were commercial litigation attorney David B. Cetron, American photographer Joseph O'Donnell, as well as American interior designer authorities say was Epstein's key lieutenant, Sarah Kellen, with numerous emails showing Jeffrey Epstein sending links to teenage girls' MySpace accounts in order to confirm their locations and identities. A now deleted email from O'Donnell sent to Cetron that was forwarded to Epstein on March 27, 2006 reads, "We are undertaking some very discreet surveillance of the house in order to observe and verify Redacted is really living there. We will then monitor her activities this coming weekend to see if she parties." Then proceeded to send the links to the girl's account as well as her friends list. Jeffrey Epstein would reply the following day saying, "Her friend writes at 4 a.m. ... Please call from the airport. She's connecting in Atlanta to Palm Beach if that helps." Founder of NeoSmart Technologies, Mohammed Al-Qudsi, archived these emails and decoded the documents on his Twitter. Additional emails the Department of Justice forgot to delete shows Epstein stalking 3 girls named Riley, Amber, and Sage. 2 emails Epstein sent to Cetron on April 1st, 2006 read, "Riley says Sage is home with Amber, ... Can we find her boyfriend Zach Bryan on dash line?" Then 2 minutes later, Epstein would write again saying, "Riley said they saw Sage this morning with Amber at the house, ... Let him run with this, ... To confirm your people are try get a copy of the POICE report, ... Epstein can also be seen replying to an email sent by Cetron, which appears blank in the archives, but given context it's implied to have been a picture, saying, "Little blonde on the right is her." I know these are instances from just that year, 2006, but 1, there's still over 2 million documents the DOJ hasn't released yet, and 2, Epstein died in 2019. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and yes, even fucking TikTok had already taken the world by storm before that year even began. Think about all the people that had connections to Epstein that also have accounts on these social media sites, or even straight up fucking owns them. Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube alone are notorious for being sketchy with their users' personal data, especially underage ones. And let's not think that this shit stopped just because Epstein died. The rest of his associates are still very much alive.
It's not too far-fetched to believe that Epstein and his associates were using social media sites as some sort of catalog for children to stalk and abduct them, considering when underground pedophile rings have been reported doing the exact same thing. The only difference being that Epstein and his associates had the power to do that without limiting the operations to the internet. Jeffrey Epstein's extensive connections between the founders of Apollo Global Management and billionaire investors Josh Harris and Leon Black were exposed to be in the files too. Apollo Global Management is an asset management company that would be acquired by the photography company Shutterfly in September of 2019. When acquiring Shutterfly, all the subsidiaries went to Apollo Global as well. These companies include printing companies, a camera rental agency, and LifeTouch, the most popular school and family photography company in the United States. Though this purchase was made after Epstein's death, with everything we know now, why would two people who had contact with Jeffrey Epstein since the late 90s want to build a limited liability company that owns a business responsible for taking children's yearbook photos? Epstein has also had ties to professors at some of the most elite academic universities such as Harvard, Columbia, Yale, Northwestern, and Stanford. Stanford professor Nathan Wolfe appears nearly 600 times in the Epstein files, including emails where the two discuss their research into female sexual behavior as well as discussions of developing a potential female Viagra. To late Northwestern University professor Roger Schenck was offered access to a girl by Epstein on 2 occasions, as well as many exchange messages between the two where Roger would say shit like, "This is why I lost interest in pussy. I knew I could have any girl I wanted on my own terms." Documents show Yale professor David Cherlin visited Epstein's New York townhouse and discussed with Epstein about the scent of women in Paris.
That's disturbing.
Columbia professor and Nobel Prize winner Richard Axel first met Epstein all the way back in the 1980s, and documents show the two kept in close contact until 2019. However, Epstein had the most connections to professors at Harvard. Harvard genetic professor George Church received $600,000 and $806,000 from the nonprofit Jeffrey Epstein 6 Foundation between 2005 and 2007, and even met with Epstein multiple times in 2014, including a dinner where Church would attend in November of that year alongside Epstein, Japanese entrepreneur Joy Ito and Reid Hoffman, and Harvard's math and biology professor Martin Nork. Between 1998 and 2002, the former chairman of Harvard's psychology department, Stephen Coslin, accepted roughly over $200,000 from Epstein and even wrote a note in Epstein's 2003 birthday book. Coslin maintained correspondence with Epstein even after his 2008 conviction, because of course he did, and he would even help Epstein draft scripts for reporters when they were trying to rehabilitate his public image. Coslin also visited Epstein while he was held up in Palm Beach County Jail and provided a referral for a New York child psychologist at Epstein's request regarding a 15-year-old girl in 2010. Harvard professor and the creator of the PBS show Poetry in America, Elisa New, had multiple interactions with Jeffrey Epstein between 2013 and 2016. Epstein arranged donations to support Elisa's nonprofit, educational video development company, First Video Education. In 2019, Elisa emailed Epstein saying that she planned to refer Lolita and recommended to read Willa Cather's My Antonia, framing both books as stories of a man whose whole life is stamped forever by the impression of a young girl. And then there's Harvard psychology professor Steven Pinker, who assisted Epstein's legal defense in 2006 by providing Alan Dershowitz and his interpretation of federal law regarding the enhancements of minors via the internet. Dershowitz, including Pinker's analysis in a court submission which contributed to the plea deal, would dismiss all federal charges against Epstein.
Rappers Jay-Z and Pusha T make an appearance in document 0124958-6, showing an FBI report from 2019 with claims from a redacted individual describing events that occurred between 1994 and 2007, identifying Pusha T as one of her quote-unquote handlers when she would be drugged and sexually abused while attending parties hosted by Jeffrey Epstein. This same document would describe other incidences, one of which occurring in 1996 where the victim was abducted from her house and would later wake up in the same room as Jay-Z, real name Sean Carter, as well as film producer and convicted sex offender Harvey Weinstein. Jay-Z would later catch an unrelated allegation in December 2024, where an anonymous woman filed a lawsuit alleging that she was drugged and raped by both Jay-Z and P. Diddy at an after-party for the MTV Video Music Awards in September of 2000. Though the lawsuit would ultimately be dropped in February 2025, it just gets to a point, you know? Grunge rock star Courtney Love also makes a surprising appearance in Jeffrey Epstein's Little Black Contact book. Document EFTA 00594469 shows a deposition report by attorney Bradley J. Edwards and Judge Paul G. Castle, directly pointing to Courtney Love as being an accomplice to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. Television host and administrator of both Medicare and Medicaid, Dr. Mehmet Oz, and his wife Lisa Oz, invited Epstein to their Valentine's Day party in 2016, roughly 8 years after Epstein was first convicted. Luxury real estate brokers Orrin Allen and Tal Alexander appear in the files attending Jeffrey Epstein's sex parties involving underage girls. When the second batch of files was released, the brothers were already facing an unrelated charge where more than a dozen women would testify that they had been drugged and sexually assaulted by the brothers. Their defense attorney would argue the brothers were simply wealthy playboys and insisted the encounters were consensual, claiming the accusations were driven by shame, regret, and greed. But after the release of the second batch of the Epstein files, the brothers were convicted on rape and sex trafficking charges on March 9, 2026.
Former NASCAR driver Brian Vickers started corresponding with Jeffrey Epstein as far back as 2012 and remained in contact with him until 2019. Vickers was also married to the aforementioned Sarah Kellen until they divorced in April 2025. In case you forgot, Sarah Kellen was also named by the authorities as Epstein's key lieutenant in his sex trafficking operations, as well as being one of the people helping Epstein stalk minors on MySpace back in 2006. Canadian-American author and researcher Pete Attieh appears in the Epstein files more than 1,700 times. In the instance of 2015, Epstein sent an email to Attieh with the small subject line, "Got a fresh shipment." Attieh replied with another email stating that the biggest challenge being friends with Epstein was because, and I quote, "The life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul." Famous magician David Blaine met Epstein for a dinner on multiple occasions between 2012 and 2016, with one email from 2018 where Epstein can be seen asking if Blaine's French girl was in town.
Another magician/illusionist named in the Epstein files is none other than David Copperfield. Additional photographs were found in the file showing Copperfield getting all up on Jizz Maxwell while the two were wearing bathrobes. As of January 2024, authorities have officially listed Copperfield as one of Epstein's personal associates. Author and New Age guru Deepak Chopra met with Epstein at least a dozen times between 2016 and 2019, according to Epstein's schedules that are found in the files. The former CEO of Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick, also had a long-running relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, with documents showing Epstein inviting Bobby to multiple events described in the files as involving the girls, as well as numerous emails between the two, with one email from May 2013 showing Epstein asking Bobby about adding microtransactions to the Call of Duty series. For those who aren't aware, microtransactions are widely despised amongst the gaming community for many reasons, ranging from the fact that they're literally just monetizing gameplay elements that used to be included in the full-price titles, to the fact that microtransactions, especially those found in Battle Royale and mobile games, are basically just pay-to-win scams that many see as normalizing gambling to younger players. So we can all go ahead and thank Epstein for inspiring all those fucking loot boxes and supply drops in Call of Duty.
A very small percentage of people who download freemium games ever pay anything for them. It's all about finding the heaviest users and extracting the most amount of cash from them. That's how you get addicts to pay $200 for a game that's not even worth 40 cents. Here is a fact. 80% of alcohol sales are paid for by alcoholics. Using slot machine tactics, freemium games are able to make millions off of an even smaller percentage of mobile gamers. But then all our profits come from people with problems.
You think the fucking alcohol industry cares? They don't care that 10% are gonna get addicted. They're counting on it. It's the same with us, but we've got our eyes on every addict's screen. Every button they click, we get feedback on how to shove this shit right down their throats.
British supermodel Naomi Campbell shows up in these fucking files. She appears in both the Lolita Express flight logs as well as the Epstein's contact book. She even photographed the Jizz. Virginia Giuffre has stated that Campbell was fully aware of Jizz's Epstein's activities. Catherine Ramirez, the former White House counsel under Barack Obama, was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein in 2014. Epstein would send Ramirez gifts, including an Apple Watch, a 9,000 Hermes bag. Emails show Ramirez referring to Epstein as Wonderful Jeffrey and Uncle Jeffrey, as well as calling him Sweetie and signing off her emails with XOXO. Epstein would arrange mammograms to help her with job opportunities, such as helping her land a job at Facebook. She would remain in contact with Epstein until his death. In fact, Ramirez was one of the 3 people Epstein called his second and final arrest. She was also named as a backed-up executor in Epstein's will.
The late French modeling scout Jean-Luc Brunel first met Epstein through Jizz Maxwell sometime in the late 80s, and by 2004, Epstein would provide about $1 million in credit to help Brunel open MC2 Modeling Management. Burnell would also appear in the Lolita Express flight logs 25 times between 1998 and 2005. In 2008, Burnell reportedly visited Epstein in jail at least 70 times, and in court documents from 2011 and 2014, Virginia Giuffre would state that Burnell would offer modeling jobs to women who would later be given to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for sex trafficking, including one instance where Burnell sent Epstein some 12-year-old girls from France as a surprise birthday gift. Giuffre has also stated that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell ordered her to have sex with Burnell while she was still a teenager. In December 2020, Burnell was arrested at Charles de Galileo Airport in Paris while attempting to board a flight to Senegal. He was later charged with the sedation and rape of a 17-year-old girl in the 1990s, and by the time he was found dead in his prison cell from a apparent suicide in February 2022, aka he was murdered by one of Epstein's droogs, 11 victims had come out about their experiences with Burnell.
Les Wexner, political activist and co-founder of Bath & Body Works and former CEO of both Victoria's Secret and Pink and Abercrombie & Fitch, retained Epstein as his financial manager from 1987 to 2007. Wexner was actually the one who purchased Epstein's Manhattan townhouse in 1989, just 6 years before Epstein moved in and claimed the ownership in 1995. Throughout the 90s, Epstein would frequently attend Victoria's Secret's fashion show and would even house models in his aforementioned Manhattan townhouse. Several of the women later accused him of using his association with Wexner to pose as a recruiter for aspiring models who wanted to rape, sell, and murder. One of the earliest people to report Epstein's activities to the authorities was visual artist Maria Farmer, who worked for Wexner in the mid-1990s. Farmer would state that the dressing rooms in both the Victoria's Secret and Pink are equipped with hidden cameras, as well as stating that Epstein and Wexner used their influence within the fashion industry to target young women and girls who are aspiring models. During this same period in time, Epstein and Wexner were involved in relocating Southern Airport Transport, a cargo airline previously linked to the CIA operations during the Iran-Contra era, from Miami to Columbus, Ohio. The airline was used to transport merchandise connected to Wexner's business. However, in 1996, agents of the United States Customs and Border Protection would discover a hidden shipment of cocaine on one of the aircrafts. Southern Air Transport was later shut down in 1998. In July of 2019, an FBI email listed Wexner as another one of Epstein's main co-conspirators, despite Wexner himself constantly denying any involvement in Epstein's crimes.
Entertainment publicist Peggy Segal first interacted with Epstein in the mid-2000s when he sent her a Cartier travel clock. She would describe the cannibalistic pedophile as charming and flattering. Segal would email Epstein during a trip to Kenya in 2009, ending it by saying, "Can bring a little baby back for you, ... or 2, boys or girls? So Madonna, we'll email when we get to Amsterdam." In 2010, Segal organized an event at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse that would be attended by former Prince Andrew, TV host and Democratic advisor George Stephanopoulos, American journalist Katie Couric, as well as stand-up comedian Chelsea Handler. Between 2015 and 2019, the year that Epstein died, the two would exchange thousands of emails, with one instance showing Epstein asking Segal to help connect him with the founder of the Huffington Post, Arianna Huffington, in an attempt to counter allegations raised by Virginia Giuffre. And all of these were just some of the people in the Epstein files. If we were to sit here and list everyone and everything in the files, this video would be way too fucking long, even if we were to exclude all the nothing burger documents. I think it's important for everyone to look through the files themselves, as well as band together to force the DOJ to release not just the unredacted files, but all of the files. Because, again, there are over 2 million additional files that still haven't been released. And all the shit we talked about throughout this video was the shit the DOJ was actually comfortable with releasing. What the fuck could be on those hidden files? For decades, all this shit was brushed off as crazy conspiracy theories. People have lost friends, been cut off by family, or even had their entire lives ruined or lost because people thought that they were crazy for believing the shit that's unfolding in front of our very eyes right now. And the recent attempts to keep us from learning more about these files have been laughable at best and terrifying at worst. So instead, I'll end the video by saying, To quote the Declaration of Independence, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government. I think it's clear what needs to be done.
But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media news, all the big media companies. So they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. You know something? They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long, when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Man, you know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.